And finally here, we would like to talk about the user-defined function. So far, the functions here are something that is provided by MATLAB already, okay? And now we would like to create our own function here, okay? And let me, before we move on, let me talk about some analogy here. And let's say we're at a restaurant, okay? And it's you know well this, so on a restaurant, we have these dining, what do you call it? Dining room, dining places, right? And the kitchen, they're usually separated, right? So you're just staying here, and what you do is you place an order in there, right? Then the order goes in, and then they cook it, and then they provide what? The food or something you ordered, right? Let's think about a case. Well, anything you guys want to have? Yeah, let's try this chicken nugget. Okay, so we'd like to have some chicken nuggets, and maybe I'd like to have like Korean barbecue sauce, and I'd like to have some ranch sauce, and maybe I'll add some celeries. Let's see. So this is what I'm going to order. So when this order goes in, of course, they're going to have a pan, and they will definitely put some chickens in there, and they will put oil, right? They'll put that chicken powder, right? And they put some seasoning, and what else? They put these things, right? And so you have these being fried, rah, dinosaur shape chicken nugget. And it's not just these. While they're cooking, things that we're not really expecting are also created of some, I don't know, some crumbles or some batter for any of these sauces. They need, I don't know, maybe some onion peels or some side products, right? And after this is all cooked, what happens is only the ones that I order, only the ones that I order, like I ordered this, right? And I ordered some sauce and ranch and celery. Those will only come out nice dish, right? And it has the sauce on it, and then it has some celery, like that. Okay, so you see, you are making an order, and those are the things that you ordered, and all the cooking is done inside here, and some of the ingredients are what you provided, like basically because you wanted chicken, chicken is in there. But you didn't talk about the oil, or you didn't talk about the chicken powder or any seasoning, right? These are the ingredients that is provided by, and it just comes with it, right? Could you wanted a chicken nugget, right? And these are something you didn't mention specifically, but these are all ingredient that comes in. And these parts are something that is created while they're cooking here, but at the end of the day, what you actually get are are just the chicken and things that you order, not these, right? You might think, well, why are you talking about this? But this is actually very similar to what we're doing with these functions, okay? So we're going to have like a main workspace. Okay. And we have this function local workspace. Previously, so don't think about this thing yet. Previously, so far, when we were doing this learning about this MATLAB, we did all the calculations here. We defined the variables. X was 2, let's say y is 3, and z is 5. And then what we do is like we find a u that is x times y divided by z. Then you find another variable z that is y cubed plus 5, and then finally uv and w. Let's say if this is the final answer that you were looking for, then that's related to u times v minus 5 divided by x, or something like that, right? So what I'm trying to say here is this is how we did so far, but when we're talking about this MATLAB. So in the main workspace or in the script, you define your variables, right? And then you use those variables to do what? Some calculation, right? And eventually you determine or derive the variable that you're looking for. Okay, and these were all done in the main workspace. Okay, so it's kind of similar to here if we were cooking all here. So this is again, what's that? This is the dining room and kitchen, but the cooking is not done here. At home we do this thing, right? You want to have some chicken nuggets, so chicken nugget, oil, and all those ingredients, you put those in and then deep fry, right? And then of course it's going to create some byproducts, right? And then at the end of the day, when this is all done, you put those all on the plate and then you eat it. It all happens here. So because of that, you might have that smell a little bit in your, living room or whatever, something like that. Okay? So that's actually what we did so far. We did define all the variables in the main workspace, and then we did these basic calculations using the variables we defined. And then by using all these, we eventually extracted or determined the final variable or final something we wanted to have. Okay? However, if we create a function, what we're going to do is instead of doing that all in the main workspace, again, this is the main workspace, and this is the function local workspace. What we do is we're going to define the variables here. Let's say x, I don't remember, it was through 3 and 5, maybe something like that. And what we do is we provide these as input to a function. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm creating my own function. Let's call it function 1. This is something I create. And then I'm providing my x, y, and z as an input to this function. And this function will do all the math and it will provide the final variable that we're looking for. Okay, so all the math was what? It defines something like u. I don't remember. Fortunately, that was x squared plus y divided by um, something plus 5. Cheat. Like x times y divided by z, and then v is y cubed plus 5. V was y cubed plus 5, and then finally the w is obtained by what? uv minus is uv minus 5 divided by x. So this calculation is done inside the function, and eventually what it provides is this w is what we're looking for. So that goes out, and that's going to be stored here. So we are just gracefully defining the variables inside here, that we're putting that as an input to the function, and it goes to the function space, and all the fun work is done inside here, doing all the calculation to find variables, and then eventually find the final result we're looking for, and that goes out. Okay, so that's this function here. And if you have this function, you can use this thing again and again and again rather than doing all the math here. Okay, and that's something we're going to be talking about later. But here I want to just focus on the concept of this function here. Okay, all right. And before I answer any questions, please just bear with me. Let's move on and let's try this thing together. All right. Okay, so here shows the grammar or syntax, how we define functions here. Okay, so the first line, you will need to have this function. You want to type this function there. Okay, and then you put a space. All right, and you have this bracket, and between those brackets you can define the variables that you want as the output. So inside here in the bracket, these are going to be the output, and then equal, you have this function, name of the function, and open and close parentheses. All right, and then there you provide the input variables that you're going to give to the function. Okay, and at the end you need to type in this end. So this indicates here, starting from here up to there, is going to be the function of this f name. And in between, you're doing all the operations to obtain the three variables that you want to have as the output. Well, here I just made it as the example, having three variables. If you want, you can just have one variable. You don't need all these. Or in some cases, you don't even need a variable there. Okay, and not just two inputs. You can have one input, no input, five input, whatever. All right, but this is how, this is the syntax for defining a function. Okay, and here I highly recommend that when we're starting now, we will just have this function as a separate file. This is a very important part. Okay, so you need to create a separate file in the script and have it named as same as the file function name. So the file name f underscore name.m here has to be same as the name of the function. So if you had your function as my f, open and close parentheses, of receiving x, and that's going to be, something like 01, then for this function, the file name has to be same, which is myf.m. It has to be same as the name of the function, all right? And the function name should be the same as the file name in which is saved, okay? Just like that. And the output variables are going to be enclosed in brackets, right? Then input variables are going to be within parentheses, okay? All right. So again, let's take a look at this very simple example here. So just like I explained in the main workspace, this is what we have been doing so far. So you define some variables, and then you use those variables to create these variables again. And then finally, let's say this is what we're looking for. So we did all these calculations here to obtain this z. Let's say z is the value that I was looking for. all right? And if you work just like this in the main workspace, all the variables are going to show up in the workspace, okay? However, if we create a function, okay, so here we have the variables like that we define, and instead of doing all this math here in the main workspace, we are going to create and use a function like that. Okay, so what actually happens is this number 3 and number 2, see, this number 3 goes here, and this number 2 goes in there as x and y, and that are passed to this function local workspace. So here, number 3 comes in, and here number 2 gets in there. And number 3 is going to be assigned to this variable called n1, and number 2 is going to be assigned to this variable called n2. And inside here, we're using these n1 and n2 variable to calculate these guys. Okay, so n1 is 3, so 3 goes in here, 3, it becomes 9, and this n2 is number 2, right? 2 is being squared times 4, so this is going to be 16. So these two are going to go down here to do a little bit of math, and eventually we calculate this out value. And that out value goes up here as the output, and that output goes out to over there. Okay, so if we define a function just like this here, we're just defining the variables and we're putting an order input. Hey, I need this thing. Then they will all do all the things that is needed to find the output, and that output will just go out and be there. So in the main workspace, we're just going to have the variables we defined and the output we obtained. Unlike here, let's say U and V are something like a byproduct. In order to get the Z, we had to define these U and V so that it can be used there. But this is something not, I don't really care about it. This is the only thing that I need. If that's the case, this is something we may want to try. Get the point here? So just like in this restaurant analogy, in the dining room, we put an order and all the cooking or the calculation is going to be done in the kitchen or the function, and then we're only getting the output, which is the food, back to the dining room or the main workspace. All right, let me try it here. So if we were to run this thing, just like in the main workspace, just like we have been doing so far, just create an editor, a blank script in the editor, and define the variables. X is 3, y is 2, u is 3 times x, v is 4 times y squared, and z is u times v plus 6 times y. Just like that. And if we run this thing, we'll see all the variables showing up in the workspace, right? And this is so-called the main file that runs the functions, okay? And if we run this thing, we will need to save this guy, right? And here, let's call it main run, something like that. Okay, and if we create a function, all right, instead of running all these, have it down there, what we're going to do is we're going to just define these two variables, x as 3 and y as 2. And this calculation is what? It's going to be done inside a function here. And it has to be a separate file for now. It does not need to be always like this, but for now, we will keep all the functions as a separate file. So what you have to do is you have to create a new script, and we're typing this function. So if function, as I type this thing in, it turns to blue. You see this? And then it's going to be out, right? And here, f on of x and y is going to be the input. And then we have an end. And in between, we will be doing this calculation. This calculation that was originally done there, we're going to push it over there. So it is going to receive x, which is the first input variable. And then the second input is going to be assigned to this variable called y. And these x and y is going to be used inside here to calculate u and v. Okay, and then it will be used to calculate this guy, and then it will eventually calculate this z, right? However, the output is what? Output variable we define is going to be out. So instead of using this z, it has to be this out so that this guy will go out. All right. Or if you want, you can keep it z and have it as d as well. So these variables are just a dummy variable. By the way, if you wanted to have this x and x, and if you wanted to have y, you can have it like that, as long as you just use it at the right place. So y is going to be used down there, and y is going to be used down there. So the first input variable, well, here in the example, I used in1 and in2. Again, these are dummy variables. You see, just the first input is being used at this place. The second input is going to be used down there. So y is the second input is going to be down here and down there, right? So the actual variable name does not really matter much, okay? As long as you put it at the right place and use it correctly. The order matters here. Okay, so anyway, we need to save this guy. And when you hit Control S to save it, it will create this function name f underscore fun. You see it? It will be automatically shown up here. So that all we need to do is just save it. So your file, the name of the file name is going to be f fun, just same as the function name here. All right. And now in the main file, what we're doing is we're using this function. So z is f fun x and y. So x and y, which is 3 and 2, is going in to this function, and it goes here, and 3 and 2 is received as xx and yy. And those xx and yy are going to be used inside here to create u, v, and z. However, only this z goes out. U, v, and xs and yy, they just stay here and they just go away, basically. After this is all run, z is the only thing that goes out, and then it's going to be assigned to this another z, or you can call it out, or zz, whatever variable that you define, or aa, oopsie, like that. And if we run it, you see, AA is 156. And in the workspace, oh, because we have these all previously saved there, if I run this main function by hitting F5, you see, only this X and Y and AA are staying there. All these byproducts or clutters or unwanted variables are just staying inside here, and it does not show up in the main workspace. Okay? All right. Any questions? Oh, one thing that came up to my mind is that one of the common mistakes that I see from students is that you're putting clear all, close all, CLC here as well, okay? Unfortunately, this will cause an issue, especially this clear all will cause an issue. The reason why is, let's say we save it like that. What happens is you define the variables x and y, and 3 and 2 goes in here, right? And that 3 and 2 has to be assigned to this x and y. But before that, you're basically wiping out all the variables that came into this function. Okay, one more time. The variables you define here, and those are going to go in here as 3 and 2, right? And it's supposed to be assigned to this x and y, but that 3 and 2, right off the bat, it's just deleted, it's cleared. So it will not be received down here, and it will give us an error. Okay, so you really do not want to have this thing here. All right, that's one thing. And this function, okay, cannot be ran by itself. Like, let's say you try to run this thing, you hit and run. It says, you don't have any inputs. Okay, so as of now, like for now, we are not running the function by itself. We are running it from the main file. So in the main file, we're using that function. Okay, we are not running the function by itself. Get it? Okay. And here I just use x and y, but instead of that, we can even just do it like 3 and 2. And I can do this thing with 5 and 4, 5 and 5, and let's call it, this is for BB. And I can do this thing for CC, which is 6 and whatever, 8. And if I run this thing, I get this 156, 1530, and 4656. You remember at the very beginning said functions that we define is just like macros in Excel. We're creating our own hotkey or a function that will do what we repetitively do or what we want. Okay, so it will save a lot of time and efforts. All right, any questions?